Early in my career, when I was working at a CDFI, it was really around protecting the risk and prioritizing return to the CDFI as far as the financials. And what I witnessed there in trying to get lending dollars, I was very naive and I was like, oh, awesome. I have access to like 30 million. Like, let's go start a business. I then learned around the nuance of like one, financial trauma, how trauma of people actually affects financial behaviors, how much distrust is woven in communities with financial institutions because of previous harm, the paradigm shifts that need to happen when folks are actually forced to live in like economic scarcity and in survival, how that actually limits our brain and being able to like step into the space of dream and abundance and thriving. So I got to witness that firsthand. But when we were creating the 5 R's of rematriation from a systems point of view, we were trying to look at how do we transform underwriting. So the 5 C's of credit, I don't know when it came about or who made the framework, but it was clear it was like not designed to include Black, Indigenous, and POC people. Because with my own community, I was trying to flow dollars to Indigenous people, and I was going through that underwriting framework, and I just kept coming up to barriers and barriers. And really, for a community that one may have not had access to financial capacity and like education or access to money, you can't really rely on a FICO score to determine their character. If folks don't have inherited wealth or friends and family money that they can access, you can't rely on like the capital, the other C, as an indicator. And when it comes to like tribal or informal or reservation economies, you can actually assess like what the market viability of their business is because there's nothing to relate it to. Last, I just want to let people know Indigenous people in the United States do not own our land. Our land is held in trust by the federal government. Therefore, we cannot utilize it as collateral or leverage it to access credit personally or as individuals. And we don't own our land. Even as tribes, we don't own our land. We can steward our land, and there's different degrees depending on treaties, but we don't actually have ownership of our land. And 99% of Indigenous land has been essentially stolen. Last, capacity. If you have huge pay inequity rates, like Indigenous women make 50 to 60 cents to the dollar, huge poverty rates, Indigenous women are the primary breadwinners and economic stabilizers in their community. And in New Mexico, nearly 60% of predatory lenders are around Native communities. Like, capacity is just not there. So we introduced the 5 R's really, again, to mitigate racial and gender bias, but we were looking at different indicators around how we were going to provide funding. So the 5 R's are revolutionary, regenerative, restorative, rooted, and relational. These were the core values that we thought was really important as us as Indigenous women in the lens of rematriation, as well as matriarchy and matrilineal societies, of how we wanted to fund businesses. So is the business game changing? Is it solving a problem? Is there seventh generation impact for the communities and the children, that we bring into the world? Does it actually help Indigenous women close their racial wealth gaps? Is it rooted in values and Indigenous communities' need? And are relationships reciprocal and enhanced and honored, especially when we think from a lender perspective and right relationship, ensuring people have supports and resources when economic risks happen or political risks happen. We just want to make sure that we're relational to a point where people trust us to divulge these things. Like, I had a job loss, I had a death, COVID happened, my business fell apart. Like, that actually does help in nurturing a relationship that's beyond transactional, but transformational in finance.